You can be super smart, super ambitious, but if you don't believe your odds of success are different to everyone else's, you're never going to make it. For the last 10 years, I've been building and running Entrepreneurs First, trying to find founders basically before they've founded a company. We've now built $15 billion worth of companies. We now work with about 400 individual founders every year. So the nuggets that we're looking for are not companies, they're people. Why do early stage companies fail? It's often co-founder breakups. If you have a great co-founding team, it doesn't matter if the idea sucks because you will iterate to the point where you get to a good idea.
Is megalomania good?
In a founder, yes. Megalomania has always been important in the people that have influenced the world, and they believe they are different to everyone else. And this is not sufficient to succeed, but it is necessary. One of the critiques I hear from US investors, they're often polite, and they'll say things like, European founders are methodical, great at product, and they are very into planning. And basically what they're saying is like,
they're not hungry.
They're slow, they're focusing on the wrong things, and the founders think they're focusing on the right things, but they're planning in months and quarters, not days and hours.
Here, that's the first recording of the year, but it will be probably released later on. Hi, Alice, how are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, I'm so happy. So you're just in Europe for a few days, are you?
I was over for the Christmas break, but I'm going back to my, sort of new home in California in a couple of days.
It was new home. Since when did you move there?
We moved out about 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
How do you like it?
I love it. It's a very special place. The weather is incredible. The people are super interesting. And even though I live in San Francisco and it's a very small city, having lived in London for 15 years, it does feel like a very, very small city. But I think part of its beauty is that it is such a small city. And so you're constantly bumping into people. I've never lived in a city where, or in a place really, where on a daily basis, you bump into people on the street that you know, going for walks or doing walking meetings or, I've got kids, so like in the kids parks. And so in some ways you are constantly networking because you're constantly bumping into people.
But I found it hard in San Francisco because there are so many places. You have like Menlo Park or Mountain View are you living downtown San Francisco? No.
Downtown San Francisco,
okay.
Yeah. And I would say that most of the energy right now around startups is in San Francisco itself. It's interesting to see how many of the VCs have moved their primary office from Sand Hill Road and Menlo Park all the way down to San Francisco.
Right.
So it does feel like San Francisco. And I think particularly since OpenAI and Anthropic are based there as well, it sort of brought all the energy back into the city.
Right. There's a new hype
back
in town.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. So Alice, where do we start? I have so many questions. I have a question about, you've been hanging around entrepreneurs, right, for like long time.
Very long time now.
and trying to find, how do you say, the gold, les pépites? How do you say? The golden, the golden ticket. But when you're in a gold mine, you're looking for what? A gold nugget? Nugget, yeah. So gold nuggets, that's your job? Is it your job?
Yeah, basically. So I spent the last 10 years trying to find founders, basically before they've founded a company. So trying to find incredible individuals who are really talented, and then working with them from the point where they're sort of considering becoming a founder all the way through to the point where they become seed funded.
Okay.
So we, the thing that we do that is different is that we really focus on the founder rather than the company. We don't even ask people about their ideas when we're speaking to them. We just want to get to know them, their behaviors, their preferences, their aspirations, their ambitions. And so the nuggets that we're looking for are not companies, they're people.
So you're pushing that to the maximum. What I'm saying is that most of the time when we invest, so we've raised money recently. I with my friends at Hoffman Capital, right? So we've raised 60 million last year, and like in this game, in this area, everybody says we don't care about the idea, we care about the team, right? So you push this to the maximum, right? I mean, you just say, you don't even need an ID. You just, okay.
Well, I mean, the thing I would say is that one of the reasons we don't ask people about their ideas when we are talking to them is that often they will have many ideas, and often a lot of them aren't very good. Because if you're a first-time founder, you may not actually know what are the pieces that constitute a good idea. Learning how to come up with an idea it's a process. It's something you can get good at. And I suppose that's why we really focus on people's behaviors, is that's the bit that won't change. Ideas do change. Ideas totally change. But people, their behaviors and their preferences don't really change significantly. They can be nudged over time, but they don't change significantly. So I would say we take the sort of what has now become commonplace as focusing on the team. We take that one step further, where it's focusing on the individual. And that's because we've found so many great individuals who don't know who to co-found with, don't know who to work with, and are still kind of searching for the right idea to really throw their time behind. And so I suppose one of the things that we're very well known for is our ability to help co-founders find each other and actually build that CEO, CTO co-founding team. And so I've been doing that for 10 years, and I love it. I just love it.
That must be quite fun. There must be about some frustration sometimes about not being into the field yourself. You're in another field, but we'll talk about that. What I want to talk about, Alice, is what is a good founder? How do you become a good founder? How do you find a good founder? What about, because you're obviously in the tech area, what about AI? And is it changing everything right now? Because as I understand, you come from the software as a service business a lot. Does it still work? What about deep tech? What about everything on the plate right now? And how much did you invest total? What is your economic model, business model? That's what we're going to talk about. Is that good for you? Yeah?
Sounds great to me.
Okay. Before that, if you agree, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Alice Bentinck, and for the last 10 years, I've been building and running Entrepreneurs First. So I'm one of the co-founders, and almost 3 years ago now, I took over as CEO. I was born and brought up in the UK, in the south of the UK, in a little national park called the New Forest. It's called the New Forest, but it's about 1,000 years old, as as much of Europe is. Before I founded EF, I started my career as a management consultant at McKinsey, did 2 years there. And that was actually where I met my incredible co-founder, Matt Clifford. We were in the same joining class, sort of global financial crash time, so 2009. And we met, became great friends, and then left after 2 years to start EF. And I've been doing this ever since. And so I moved to California 3 years ago, and I've got a husband and 2 little kids.
Nice. I'm just checking where it's New Forest. So, Alice, we've almost been neighbors, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because look, where I was brought up, actually. That's here, New Forest, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So I was raised in Cherbourg, right in front.
We could have waved at each other across the channel.
Yeah, that's fun. No, why I'm saying this is that, you were raised not even in London. What were your father, mother doing? What were your parents doing?
So my father is military. He's a Royal Marine, which is one of the kind of elite special forces. And my mother was a doctor. I was back home at Christmas where my parents live, and I suddenly realized that growing up, I've got 10 aunts and uncles. No one worked in a business.
Well, yeah.
Everyone worked either for the state, was a teacher, was a doctor, was military. And so growing up, business was not really, in startups, definitely not, but even just like working in a business was quite a extraordinary thing. And I think one of the big moments for me was when I was at high school, there was something called Young Enterprise, that you've got the opportunity to run your own startup while you're at school. Actually, because I was at home over Christmas, I found my teenage diaries, which A, are incredibly embarrassing and no one must ever read them. But B...
Would you give them to me?
God, no. No one must see them. I should burn them. But the bit is, I'm either obsessed with friendship dynamics or boys or the other thing that I write at length about is my complete obsession with this startup that I'm building at school. And that was the thing that really got me thinking that this could even be a career path, that being a founder could even be a thing. And I'd sort of forgotten about this. And I knew that I'd been really interested in it. But
like what age? Like
17.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's interesting what you just said is friendship dynamics is something you're working on right now. I mean, it's not friendship, but it's still human dynamics, right?
It's a large part of what we do, and it's the bit that people, and VCs when we started this 10 years ago said, this isn't going to work. You cannot take strangers and turn them into co-founders. And we've now built $15 billion worth of companies through this process. And the reason why it works is because we're so intentional.
15 billion.
15 billion.
Oh, okay.
We're so intentional about it. Because I think one of the things that we often see is people stumble into what we call a co-founder of convenience. It's just the person, the friend that happens to be available at the time when they wanted to found something.
I've done that so many times, yeah.
And it doesn't always work out. And there's often all this baggage, right, that's connected to that relationship. And one of the things that we are very obsessive about is, okay, well, how do you create the environment that allows people to have the conversations that are fierce and are about actually what do you want? What are you willing to give up to co-found together? Do you really have the right complementary skills? Do you have the same intentions, the same ambitions? And getting people to have those conversations up front. And then also, most importantly, giving them an easy way to get out of a relationship that isn't working. Because typically what you see is somebody finds their co-founder of convenience and then they work together for, say, 3, 6 months. They know it's not working, but it's too painful to leave. Then they've built something and they have this horrible, messy breakup and who gets to keep what and what happens to the IP. And one of the big reasons why EF works is we make the opportunity cost of getting out of the wrong relationship super, super low. So you're in the wrong relationship. We'll help you identify that. We'll help you break up with your co-founder. And then there's another co-founder literally in the same office as you for you to test the very next day.
But what about the other co-founder?
They also have someone else to test the very next day. We don't see ourselves as an incubator or accelerator. We call ourselves a talent investor.
I mean, everything you say is so true. I've been stuck maybe for years when I was very young, but yeah, with in good companies, actually. The business was good, growing. But then you had one of the co-founders who was like, what the fuck are you doing here? And it's just the guy you're just like, hey, you, what are you doing for the next 5 years? Well, no, nothing. I'm free right now. Yeah. You want to create a company? Yeah, sure. What is it about? Yeah, I don't care.
And this is why, why do early stage companies fail? It's often co-founder breakups. If you have a great co-founding team, it doesn't matter if the idea sucks because you will iterate to the point where you get to a good idea.
Maybe the problem is that in co-founding a business, in creating a business, there is a prenup that is signed super early, and then you're like, okay, we've signed this status, we've signed this agreement. In French, we call it the pacte d'associé, and then after a couple of months, and then. Well, you don't want to divorce after 6 months, right? It's not like an option. It's too late. You've raised money maybe, or you're in business.
We think about breakups in days, not months or weeks. As in, how can you within 48 hours make a call on whether somebody is the right co-founder for you? So the thing we really...
How can you make sure in 48 hours?
It's amazing how people do have intuition, but they suppress that intuition because they think... they've watched HBO's Silicon Valley or the Social Network, and they think they have a view of what a co-founder should be like. But the number one thing we get people to focus on is productivity. In this relationship, do I feel like I'm the most productive I've ever been? Now, in some ways, that sounds obvious, right? But it's amazing how many people I speak to, and they're like, oh, yeah, it's been, we haven't made that much progress, but, the next 2 days we'll make progress. And it's like, no, you're just deluding yourself. And I'm always amazed at when you see somebody change co-founding teams, they change as a person. When they get into the right co-founding team, they are a better founder, they're a more productive founder, they're more inspired. And this is kind of why I'm so obsessive about these co-founder dynamics, because it is not only about creating a great business, it's about who do you become as a founder. Who you become as a founder is in relation to who you co-found with, because you will become stronger in the areas that they're weaker, you will become weaker in the areas they're stronger. But yeah, we always push on this idea of, productivity is traction for teams. If you're super productive, keep going, work it out. If you're not, can it immediately.
Donnez-moi une demi-seconde pour vous parler de mon nouveau partenaire que je suis hyper fier d'avoir sur Génération Do It Yourself, qui s'appelle Stripe. Vous le savez, ici, j'ai discuté avec des centaines, littéralement, d'entrepreneurs. Et il y a un truc qui pioche, mais presque tout le temps. C'est la facturation, le billing, la monétisation. Pas juste envoyer une facture, hein, ça évidemment c'est facile. Mais comment on structure un modèle? Comment on scale? Comment on grossit fortement? Comment on pivote? Comment on suit tout ça? Ça, c'est une vraie friction chez beaucoup d'entrepreneurs. Et à chaque fois, il y a toujours un nom qui revient, c'est Stripe. Vous connaissez sûrement Stripe, vous en avez entendu pour les paiements. Mais là, aujourd'hui, je voudrais parler d'une nouvelle fonctionnalité qu'ils ont développée et qui est absolument incroyable. Stripe Billing, leur solution de facturation. Stripe Billing, c'est ce qui vous permet de tout lancer rapidement, de tester des produits, des packages, des options à la carte, sans avoir à attendre que votre équipe de dev ait à recoder l'intégralité de votre produit. Vous voulez facturer à l'usage? C'est possible. À la consommation? C'est possible. En token, Stripe Billing le fait. Que vous soyez en B2C, en B2B, tout est géré par Stripe Billing. Et derrière, Stripe s'adapte à tout. Il gère la TVA, les devises, les paiements locaux, les relances, la conformité. Bref, vous vous concentrez uniquement sur votre produit, pas sur l'usine à gaz. Quand vous avez une boîte qui grandit vite, on le voit très souvent en IA ou en SaaS. Le pire frein à votre croissance, généralement, c'est pas la tech. C'est le modèle de monétisation qui ne suit pas. Et ça, Stripe l'a très bien compris. Il sauve la vie de centaines de milliers d'entreprises qui scalent très fort. En 2025, ce sont pas moins de 1400 milliards de dollars qui ont transité par Stripe. 1400 milliards. 1,3% du PIB mondial. Je sais pas pour vous, mais moi je trouve ça assez vertigineux. Stripe Billing est déjà utilisé par plus de 300 000 entreprises dans le monde, donc vous ne serez pas les premiers. Avec un taux de dispo de 99,999%, un support dans plus de 135 devises et 40 langues. Donc si vous êtes fondateur en finance, en produits ou côté go-to-market, allez jeter un œil immédiatement sur stripe.com/billing. Vous avez le lien en descriptif. Avec Stripe Billing, vous structurez, facturez, scalez sans friction. Allez, on reprend l'épisode.
When do you know it's not the right person? What are the signs?
In the very, very early days, it's amazing how coming up with an idea, that idea generation, can be a real tripping point, but quite a hard one to understand. So one of the mistakes we see people make is so let's say we're co-founding together. And you have a couple of ideas you're interested in. I have a couple of ideas that I'm interested in. And so it feels in some way the obvious thing to do is that we'll just work on all of those ideas simultaneously. And one of them will come out as the front runner. Now, that's actually a terrible idea. And the reason why it's a terrible idea is that you're probably actually holding on to your ideas and pushing your ideas harder. I'm pushing my ideas harder. And so we're not actually having the hard conversation about what is the idea that we're both deeply excited by. And also, if you're running ideas in parallel, you aren't actually deep diving on any one specific idea. So you're slowing down the information gathering process. So what we always push founders to do is pick one idea, one starting point that you both agree on, and then speed run that as fast as possible to the point where you don't think there's anything else there. And then either change to a new idea or iterate that idea or change your co-founder. But I think that's one of the mistakes we definitely see is where people are like, cool, we're trying 4 ideas simultaneously. And it feels like you're mitigating risk, but actually you're really significantly increasing the risk in your co-founder relationship.
How important is the ID paternity, the ownership? I've created a like what we call the founder, a startup studio, right? And each time it was even harder when the startups were booming. Like, because at some point we had probably 20-30% of the company as a startup studio, and the CEO didn't have the idea, and it was a drama each time. How does it work at Entrepreneurs First?
So our job is to help you come up with an idea and help you as a co-founding pair to come up with your idea, the idea that you are most interested in. In the early days of EF, now 10 years ago, we did try giving people ideas, and what we found is that they just didn't feel the level of agency or ownership over those ideas. And so when times got tough, they would flake out. It wasn't the thing that they really loved. And so what we push is this idea of what is your edge? What is the thing that you have previously invested time, energy, headspace into learning about, working on? That should be your starting point, and use that as a starting point to understand, what is the space that you can dominate. I think the idea paternity thing, who gets to own an idea? One of the reasons why I think it's so important that our companies get exposure to the US, and now we take all of our companies to the US. One of the reasons why is that the competition, the level of competition there, and understanding that basically there are a bunch of companies that have an idea that is pretty much 95% identical to yours makes you better. It forces you to understand how you're going to differentiate. And it forces you to be as productive as possible, because that can be one of the ways you win. So I think sometimes people shy away from the US because it is seen as too competitive. But actually the reason to go is for the competition. The competition will make you better. It will help you refine your idea. So I think, ideas are 10 a penny. What really matters is execution.
So you don't ever come with ideas. You don't sometimes come with and say you should do this.
No.
Do you do the opposite? Do you sometimes say, oh no, this idea is a piece of crap?
Not quite the terminology we use, but yes, we do. But it's really, really hard. As an investor, you are looking for the contrarian ideas, right? You're looking for the non-obvious ideas. And so you do have to be really open-minded to what a good idea looks like.
What is the best non-obvious idea you've invested in?
Best non-obvious idea. We've invested in some, we've done a lot of deep tech investing, and we don't always get it right. In 2018, we put a bunch of money into quantum computing. It was just too early for quantum computing startups at that stage, and particularly for our model. But the nice thing about our model is that because we're, investing small amounts of money, we want to try and invest in anything that sounds sort of even vaguely interesting. But again, the bit that we go back to is if we believe in the founder, we will take a risk on the idea, even if we don't love it. I was recently proved wrong by a founder that was building an edtech, and edtech is not a space that is one that I love. It is a really, really hard space to build a company at scale with a good business model.
Apart from Duolingo, there's no freaking amazing edtech worldwide.
And again, that's it's a B2C model rather than selling to schools. And we had one founder recently who was completely obsessed with the space. And the first iteration of the idea was kind of okay, but over the last 12 months, he's turned it into something super, super interesting and something that I would never have guessed. From the first time that we met him, started working with him, I would not have guessed that he would get to where he is today. But again, that's why we invest in the people, not the ideas, because he is fantastic. He's such an exceptional individual, such an exceptional team. And it's that level of customer obsession and biased action that meant he was able to get to an idea that actually now I think is going to be huge.
You know what? I have a lot of frustration around edtech. Actually, I do. We've had that talk with several people because I've. So, how old are your kids? Can we?
They are 3 and 5.
3 and 5. Okay.
Two
so
boys.
At 5, probably 5. Yeah, 5. Unless most of the people around tech, you don't want them to get any screen at all. But at some point, for the second one, he will get at 5 because the first one will get them at But you just tell them, look, you can do this on the tablet, but it's only math, right? And you get this good math application, and it's fun, and it helps them count and learn mathematics. And you're like, this is freaking great, right? But I haven't found on every single topics like geography, history, math, French, English. Well, actually, Duolingo is working quite well, even for kids. But
oh, really?
Yeah. It can be quite early, but so I think there's something to crack in this area.
It is going to change, but the school system in any country is going to take a long, long time to change. So I think the kind of direct-to-consumer model for edtech is interesting, and we will see big change in the next couple of years. But I think to actually change the school system, it's going to take a while.
Yeah,
there's a lot of legacy people, infrastructure, beliefs that are going to take a while to shift.
Let's not open the AI topic right now, but I think AI is going to change a lot of things in that area. But if we want to get back to the founders interaction, so you help them find their co-founder, which can be like a team of 2, 3. Is there a magical number?
The magic number is 2. You can. There are a bunch of examples of large co-founding teams, but it's typically where people have known each other for a long time. If you are co-founding with someone who is a stranger, our strong recommendation is a team of 2.
Is it based on numbers? I mean, what are you saying? Because 3, sounds somehow interesting because you'll get a balance.
Everyone wants to be in a team of 3. my push on that would be it radically increases relationship complexity. And so if you don't have a deep relationship previously, introducing a third person radically increases the communication overhead, the alignment overhead. And that's particularly true if you're trying to develop an idea together. If one person has an idea and is building a team around them, that can work. But if you're trying to co-create an idea, it's very, very hard. The other thing I would push on is the most expensive decision you will ever make is having a co-founder, because they're going to take, 50% of your company. If you have
Really? Can it be 30?
Well, it depends what your view is on that person. As in, do you see that person as somebody who is going to co-create this company with you for the next 10 years? If yes, the fact that you've been working on it for 2 months before them or had, a year's more work experience is not going to justify that extra 20% that you get.
Sorry, I interrupted. Yeah. But it's important. It was my next question, but yeah.
But it's so expensive to have a co-founder that adding a third co-founder, whenever we see somebody adding a third co-founder, the question we always ask is, couldn't they be a first employee? You're looking at a radically different level of equity compensation for a co-founder versus a first employee.
Very interesting.
And so my push is always is it actually worth the cost? And it's amazing how when you actually put it like that, often often people don't believe that's the case. The reason people often end up in threes is they just don't want to have a hard conversation. There's a hard conversation where they know that one person is probably superfluous and they're just trying to be nice. And as a founder of a company, one of the things you'll learn very quickly is that much of the work you have to do is going to be hard conversations with people, hard conversations with team members, with investors, whatever it may be. And so actually, flexing that muscle from the start and making sure you set yourself up for success with the right number of co-founders is a good way to start.
Let's dig into hard conversation. What do you mean by hard conversation? How important is it to have them? What are the main topics of a hard conversation you should have?
If you speak to first-time founders, or I suppose even second-time founders, and get them to reflect on what has been hardest, it'll often be people-related stuff. Either it's the wrong co-founder or wrong early hires, or they hired their friend or their brother or their lover and then had to have a really difficult conversation when it wasn't working out. And the common theme is everyone has those conversations too late. And I definitely, from founding EF and Entrepreneurs First, is a weird investor in that, we're a team of 100 people. We're actually structured like a company rather than like a VC firm. And, I look back on the early days of EF and there's so many hard conversations that I should have had, but you sort of shy away from because it would be awkward and you don't really have the skills yet. There's a book I absolutely love on this that I recommend to first-time founders called Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. And what I love about it is it gives you a bunch of frameworks for how to have the kind of conversations that make your stomach clench, the ones that you're dreading. And it both helps you understand why you should be having those conversations and then gives you the structure to have those conversations. So any first-time founders listening to this, I would strongly recommend reading that book.
Say it again, the name of the book?
It's called Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott.
Okay. Do you have an example of, or some things from that framework that could work, or some tips?
The bit that I often think of, I'm quite conflict averse. And so my fear having these conversations, having one of these fierce conversations is that, it's going to be awful for the other person and it'll be awful for me. And it's just going to be awful. And then the framing that she has in the book that I really like is everything will be better the sooner this conversation happens. This conversation is an unlock. If you haven't had the fierce conversation, you are on a path that is wrong for both of you. And so the sooner that you can have this conversation, it will be an unlock for both of you. Now, even if that means that you're firing somebody, it's better that it happens now and that everyone is able to move on rather than delaying it.
Alice, it's a bit early to talk about personal stuff, but now she's looking at me like, what is he going to say? Since you're talking about all of these and the choice of your partner and the hard conversation and everything, my question is, how far does that interfere in your personal life? I mean, is it like completely different, or do you use those recipes with your husband?
Oh, as my husband says, you're managing me. I'm not allowed to use my manager voice with him. So
Babes, we have to get this hard conversation right now.
I mean, I do think at one point you could use EF as a way for creating marriages because, really stress testing relationships and enabling people to get past small talk and actually have those fierce conversations. But no, my husband does not enjoy it when I use any sort of work structures or frameworks on it.
Well, it should be kind of the same at some point. How do you identify when you need to get that hard conversation?
I mean, it's different with co-founders, it's very much productivity. And then with hires and people on your team, I think it's really hard. Again, productivity is super important, but sometimes it may not be productivity. Sometimes it might be fit. And, that's such a tricky thing to pin down. It's such a, it's sort of less in fashion now, but about 5 years ago, everyone was talking about the cultural fit interview. And I think that's sort of gone slightly out of fashion now. But there is this thing of sometimes you can have somebody who's totally brilliant in your team, but they are the wrong fit. They either have a wrong view of what you're trying to create. And actually, I think that's probably some of the mistakes that I've made is where you have somebody in the team who is brilliant, but they are trying to build something that is different to what you're trying to build. And I think that those can be some really hard things to identify because you can see their brilliance and their ability, but actually if you're not fully aligned and if you're just ultimately trying to build different things, that is going to be more destructive for the company than having them out.
How important is it to have like that fit, but even like fun or like good time, at work? I mean, do you see some companies where like guys, girls are like totally boring and like not fun, but like very successful? I mean, you don't have to be fun. I don't know if all of those guys we're talking in the tech area are the funniest person on earth, but what I'm saying is it important?
I suppose it depends on your definition of fun. If you're in startups and particularly if you're a founder, it probably is because you want a large part of your life's meaning and fun to come from work. And I love what I do. I feel so lucky that my job, my career is getting to work with some of the most interesting and exciting people in the world and helping them unleash their potential on the world. And these founders keep me on my toes. Like they are not easy people to work with, but I love that. I love that about them. So do I have fun at work every day? Yes, I do, but I have fun because it's hard. And it's not necessarily, that we play ping pong every day. It's the work itself is fun and gives me joy and challenges me. And so, when I look at the founders that I work with, I think ultimately they do have a lot of fun. They hire people that they want to work with. They're working on a problem they really care about. I suppose when I see founders who aren't having fun, it's often because they've gone after a customer that they don't want to spend time with. They don't want to go to a conference with 1,000 of, insert customer type. And then, I'm always surprised when there's a founder who's, 22 and is obsessed with what I think is actually a pretty boring industry or pretty boring customer. And they're so excited to go to, Denver to hang out for 2 days with this particular group of customers that I would probably put more in a sort of less fun category. So I think you need to understand what your version of fun is. But the great thing about startups is I just think they are a more fun place to work. But it's not, I don't think it's about the kind of peripheral benefits. It's about the core work itself. You're solving a problem you love. You have high agency, high autonomy, and that is the fun. But that said, we also at EF we take the whole company away for a week to. We've done Italy, we've done Spain, we've done Lisbon, and there's some work, but there's also some fun.
All of your companies, then?
No, we take my whole company, the whole EF team.
So how big is the EF team?
100 people.
Okay, so let's get back to the what you do, right? So is it like we would call promotions? Like, do you have like every 3 months, 6 months, you will recruit new founders, batches? Yeah. Yeah. How often?
So we have batches that run across Europe and India and the US. And so we have
3 different batches.
So every site has multiple batches a year. Okay, so there's normally a start date every couple of months.
But you don't mix Indian and Americans and Europeans.
So every batch starts off as about 50 people. And for the first 8 weeks, you are just finding a co-founder within that pool. And then after 8 weeks, you get access to everyone who's currently going through EF. So, our job is we want to help you find the right co-founder. We want to help you find the right idea. And so we want to give you access to as many potential co-founders as possible.
Would that be a good idea to try to mix like Indians and Americans and Europeans like very early on and create companies that might have chances to be bigger worldwide?
So we have a great company called Hanomi where one of the founders, Drishti, she was going through our Bangalore cohort. And it just so happened that the perfect co-founder for her, Marco, was going through a cohort we're running in Europe.
All right.
And once he met her, he basically jumped on a plane the next day. They did a Zoom call. He jumped on a plane the next day and went out and worked in Bangalore with her for a couple of months. They moved super fast. The company was doing really well. We invested. They then moved out to the US, raised from some incredible investors in the US.
Wow.
And it's one of those amazing stories where, there's no way they could have met any other way.
That's why it's important. It could be interesting. Okay.
They both had these sort of interesting niche skill sets and niche area of interest. And so, removing those international boundaries is super important. You want to find the right co-founder for you wherever they are in the world.
So how many people in a batch? Like
about 50.
About 50. How many candidates
that apply?
Yeah.
So we get thousands of applications a year. Actually, one of the things that has changed in the last year is applications this year, 2025 applications are double what 2024 applications were.
Okay.
And that's largely, I think it's largely because we've made this shift where now every company we build, we take out to the US.
Okay.
And that's just super popular right now. We see more and more young founders wanting to point towards the US from very early on in their founding journey.
I hope you won't have to buy a Trump card for each and every one of them because it's going to cost you a lot of money.
It'd be pretty expensive. No, the O1 visa works pretty well. So thousands, how do you select them? What kind of people is it first? Like, is it like a man, woman, age? It's typically early career. So definitely getting younger and younger. So I'd say anywhere between 18 and sort of 28-ish. Okay. We want people who are still at the beginning of their careers, at the beginning of their journey. We do get more.
I wouldn't be allowed then.
We can make an exception for you. We do get a lot of applications from men. We do a bunch of outreach specifically to try and increase the number of women who are aware of entrepreneurship and make sure that they see this as something that they want to do. And actually we have some of the best sort of gender ratios in the business, where normally it's like about 30% of our cohorts are women. And then nationality-wise, we ran a residency in a castle in Germany this summer, and we had 22 different nationalities from all over Europe and all over the world there. So we get a ton of applications, but I suppose the other thing that we do and that we invest a lot of time and money into is going and finding people, really getting into local communities, getting into local clubs, building our own communities, and really trying to work out, who is the very, very best, the most exceptional potential founder within that group.
Yeah, because at some point, maybe the gold nugget might be, not applying to EF, right? So you might have sometimes to find some people. The gold nugget doesn't jump into your face. You have to go in a mine.
You got to dig.
Dig. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do that.
We do a lot of that.
Oh.
Yeah. We run events. We build clubs and communities. We run chess tournaments. We run
chess. All right.
History of ambition reading groups. We run hackathons. We run anything that we think ambitious, smart people will be interested in, and use that as a way to get to know them. And sometimes it's, the people that come to these groups aren't necessarily always the people we end up working with. It might be a friend of theirs. But, my team, why do we have 100 people? It's because we have most of the team going out, and we call them talent investors. Their job is to go and identify the most exceptional potential founders. And that's really hard, right? Because they haven't necessarily founded anything at that point. Their job is to go out and kind of sniff these people out, go digging. And yeah, it works pretty well.
How do you compare it to yourself to YC, Y Combinator? We've recorded last year at YC. I understand it's a different model, right? But still, at some point, there is a part of competition because some of the people you want at EF might go to YC and the other side around.
Yeah, YC is the most incredible investor. And typically they still invest in companies that have ideas and co-founders. So we're really looking for people who are one stage before that. And actually, some of our companies then go on to do YC afterwards. But yeah, we go one stage before. So we're really looking for people at the very beginning of considering being a founder. They might have an idea, but they aren't necessarily 100% sure it's the right idea. They're looking for a co-founder. They want the kind of hands-on matchmaking service that we can provide. So yeah, it's a slightly different model. We call it talent investing because it really is about the people and providing a service to a person rather than to a company.
What is the best profile coming to you? I mean, the best kind of person you like, and you see her, him, and you're like, yeah, I like that.
I mean, always as an investor, you have to be so careful about pattern matching. But while we're talking about pattern matching, what do we look for? We're like builders, people who can create things, people who have technical backgrounds. Having a very strong bias to action. So that bias to build, the bias to create, and having that speed and urgency that comes with it. One of the things that I think as Europeans, we're probably under-indexed on, and particularly now I'm working with more American talent as well, is finding individuals who are aggressive, who are genuinely playing to win, who are looking to dominate a market and destroy everything else in their path. And I think what's interesting about working with Europeans, and as a European that now lives in the US, I'm definitely now kind of unpicking this more and more, is in Europe, the way that we're brought up and the kind of one of the cultural norms is a lot of this stuff around ambition and aggression is often repressed. It's something that is not culturally okay to talk about. It's something that is not culturally okay to say to your parents or to your aunts and uncles or to your grandparents. Whereas in the US, that is much more normalized. And so part of our process at EF is helping young Europeans kind of peel back the layers of cultural norms that are constraining them to some extent and giving them a space. And, your tagline for the podcast is, it's about the people you surround yourself by. You become the average of the people you surround yourself by. And I think EF has become a safe space for young Europeans that want to have outlandish levels of ambition, outlandish levels of aggression. And they want to be surrounded by people who embrace that and encourage that. And actually, they pull off, stripping them off of all the niceties and kind of politeness that we have in Europe. And again, I think this is why giving them exposure to the US and really understanding how Americans think and behave, and part of the DNA that makes the American dream viable is this intense ambition and this intense aggression. And I think before I moved to the US, I definitely underestimated just how big a delta there was between how they think in the US about this and how we think about it in Europe.
Interesting. The way you talk about like aggressivity or playing to win, destroy everything else is actually when you talk about US at the moment, we're talking, right, is terms that are very much American, that we're like, we're kind of this post, how do they call that? For a few years, everything had to be like very polished. And now we're getting back into these terminologies, right? And it's true that it's sometimes a bit shocking when you use those words in France, maybe in the UK, I don't know. But
yeah, in the UK it's shocking.
And you're on the BBC or in Radio France, and you're like, who the fuck are those like entrepreneurs being like, and I don't know how or where I want to put myself in here on that field. I mean, I think it's important, but I don't know. I'd rather build than destroy. You know what I'm saying? It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should all be building rather than destroying. I think it's important to understand what game you're playing. And if you are a founder, you're playing a global game. You should be trying to build a globally important company. And particularly if you're building in Europe, you pretty early on have to think about internationalization. You have to go abroad. And why I think going to the US early is so important is it really shows you what you're competing with, and helps you understand a mindset that is very different from the European mindset. And you can choose whether you want to take it on or not. And you can choose whether you want to be like that, but you need to know that it exists, and you need to expose yourself to it. And, before I moved to America, I spent 3 months a year there for 3 years, which was a great initial kind of baptism of fire. But it's really only moving there that I've fully understood the American psyche and what we as Europeans can learn from or kind of take inspiration from.
It seems to me that the differences are growing now. I mean, between Europe and the US, they weren't that big 10 years ago, were they? Is it a misconception?
Well, I mean, 10 years ago when I started EF, the European ecosystem was completely different. As in, the European ecosystem has done this incredible, rapid fire transformation where, it is one of the best ecosystems in the world. Like just the depth of capital and startups that are now being produced, it's incredible. And so, like, what are the differences between the two ecosystems? Like, ultimately, my push is we should be trying to build the European ecosystem. We should be trying to build it and make it as successful as possible. But the way that we do that is not by rejecting the US. It's by working out how to build a bridge and connection between the two, and working out how can we bring the best of Europe and take inspiration from the magic that is in the US. They are the best in the world at building great companies. They're building $1 trillion companies. We in Europe have not nailed that. And actually, one young German founder that I was speaking to, he put it really, really nicely. He said, if you want to be a great actor, you've got to go to Hollywood. You've got to see what good looks like. You've got to have the connections. And I think the more that we can understand that building a bridge and, every founder doing a sort of pilgrimage to Silicon Valley, learning what goes on there, building the connections that will be useful for both today and in the future as they grow. I think that's how we can help strengthen the European ecosystem.
And in terms of capital at the end, if you do that, will all of those companies become American companies? Will it just make it even more true? You know what I'm saying? Or because when I talked to Nicolas de Seine last year at YC, I mean, he was telling me you have to become an American company if you want to apply at YC, and like not just an American subsidiary, the American HQ. That's compulsory. But then at the end, that means we're kind of destroying value for Europe. What's your point on that?
One of the things we're seeing is that more and more young founders want to go to the US. So partly for me as a founder of a company that has a product, my customers telling me they want to go to the US. And so we want to make that happen. But there's lots of different models that you can use. So when I look at how our companies have used the US as a platform, got an incredible company called Fleetcraft, and it was founded by the CEO, Finn, is from Ireland. And they went out to the US. They raised from SUSE, which is one of the world's best seed VCs, investor in Robinhood and Flexport and all these great companies. And then they came back and HQ'd in London. And largely it was because they have customers all over the world. They've got customers in Asia and Australia. And so actually being on a GMT time zone and being based in Europe made most sense for them. We've got some companies that have gone out and permanently relocated to the US, but that have brought over European talent to the US and used that kind of European talent pool. One of our larger companies, Clio, which is a financial management app that makes hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue a year, they actually turned off their European product and fully focused on the US, but are HQ'd and the team is based in London. So I think it's understanding that there's multiple different ways to use the US market. But if you look at a lot of the larger European success stories, they've taken capital from the US. So it's really this idea that the connection between the two, the bridge between the two, will make the European ecosystem stronger. And it's not just about just fully exporting people. We will see a blend. There's multiple ways to do it.
100%. I understand that we cannot just do without the US, and it's a way to grow faster. My point is that at some point, we as European, we have to fight to make Europe great again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree. And my belief is that by building this bridge, that is one of the ways that we do it. There is a very nationalistic approach to startups often. It's British venture capital for British companies and French capital for French companies. And we will all be stronger by creating more connections between all of the world's ecosystems. So I think this is more about how do we take inspiration from the US? How do we learn from the US? How do we access capital from the US? But I think the way that you do that is by spending time in the US. And maybe it's HQing your company there, maybe it's not. But I think getting European founders to see that one of the best ways to learn is to get that sort of deep dive into how the very best in the world do this. And that's an important part of your learning journey as a founder.
Vous êtes plus d'1 million par mois à regarder mes vidéos. 90% d'entre vous n'êtes pas abonnés. Alors je vais vous demander un truc. Parce qu'après 8 ans de Génération du Yourself, ce projet, c'est le projet de ma vie. Toutes les semaines, avec mon équipe, on s'arrache pour trouver les meilleurs invités, pour t'inspirer et pour tirer le plus d'apprentissage possible. Pourquoi ? Parce que ma conviction profonde, c'est qu'il faut utiliser son temps de cerveau disponible sur du contenu plus intelligent. C'est important pour moi que ce contenu soit disponible gratuitement. Alors, ce que je vais te demander, c'est simple. Abonne-toi. Pour toi, c'est juste un clic. Pour nous, ça change absolument tout. Plus on a d'abonnés ici, meilleurs seront les contenus, les invités, les productions et donc la valeur qu'on t'apportera. C'est maintenant. Do it.
It makes me want to open a chapter that I didn't expect to open, but one of your favorite chapter probably is Brexit.
Gosh, I didn't think we'd get there.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking actually a lot of my friends here in Paris used to live in London because they're in the financial area. So, former HSBC, Goldman Sachs, or Bank of America, or I could tell more. And in the financial industry, it has been a great drama, right? I mean, everybody flew away. But it seems to me that in the tech area, I don't know, the tech industry in the UK is doing very well, right? So what happened?
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about what was the consequences?
I mean, I did not vote for Brexit. It was not my preference. And largely, my kind of 2 cents on this would be that the ecosystem in London was getting to a strong point of maturity at the point where Brexit happened, and has continued growing really well. I think the tech ecosystem in London, the tech ecosystem in Paris, in Germany, they've all continued to grow hugely over the last kind of 5 years.
Yeah.
My one concern with Brexit, and I think we'll still see how this plays through and how it impacts the tech ecosystem in the UK, is we have to maintain access to the UK for the best and brightest. And I think generally for Europe, making sure that we get access to the world's best talent. What is one of the best things we have? It's our universities. Have some of the world's very best universities that genuinely can pull in some of the world's best talent. And making sure that remains true. And I think one of the challenges with Brexit was it made it look like the UK was, closing its doors to some of those people and making our universities look less attractive. And so I suppose that's the bit that I'm, constantly keeping my eye on, is where is that flow of exceptional international talent coming from? But, so far I think the UK, where I think the tech sector in the UK is doing an amazing job and has been pretty resilient to Brexit.
Yeah. Would it have been faster without, you think, for the tech area, or it's
I don't know.
Really, you don't know?
I think it's also tricky because it's all tied up with COVID, right? Brexit happened, then COVID happened, 100%. And it's very hard to work out what the counterfactual would have been.
So EF started in London, right? And how fast did it go in other countries, France, Germany?
So we started investing properly in about 2015. And then a couple of years later, the first office we opened was in Singapore.
Oh, right.
So we went to Asia first, and then we opened in Berlin and Paris and Hong Kong and India. But really our kind of first expansion was into Asia. And I don't know if you'll remember, but there was a sort of big focus on the Asian startup ecosystem and growth there, and everyone investing in India and China. But yeah, we've opened EF in many, many different places. Not all those offices still exist. Yeah. We've done a big consolidation over the last couple of years. But yes, we've done a lot of international expansion.
What was the day one of EF? How did you give? Yeah.
Day one. So we actually started it as a not-for-profit. So it started off as a not-for-profit education company, basically.
Like Sam Altman. wasn't OpenAI some kind of not-for-profit? Yeah,
all the best companies change from not-for-profit to for-profit. Well, we'll see.
Hopefully, you didn't have Elon Musk on the board investing in the not-for-profit.
Not quite. So we started as a not-for-profit, and we actually tried to register as a charity. The idea was that we were going to help, young people straight out of university to learn entrepreneurial skills. And when we first started, this idea that we were going to focus on individuals, who didn't have an idea, who didn't have a co-founder, didn't have a company, was seen as like a complete anathema to the status quo. And the pushback from VCs was, this is not how it's done. This will not work. You shouldn't do this. And we kept going to university campuses, and our customer would keep on being like, I desperately want this. How do I do this? And I remember there's this guy who we met on our first visit to Cambridge University in the UK, and he had a job at one of the best hedge funds, and he turned it down to join EF. And the hedge fund said, whatever they're paying you, we'll double it. And they were like, they're not paying me anything. And so there was just such strong pull from customers, even though the VC ecosystem told us what we were doing was a totally crazy idea. And I always tell founders this story because it's a great reminder to listen to your customers and basically no one else. But the early days of EF, we spent 3 years as a not-for-profit. It was a hand-to-mouth existence. We had a team of interns. It was super, super scrappy. And we spent 3 years basically learning how to make it work.
So from when to when?
2012 to 2015.
Okay.
And then in 2015 was the first time that we started investing. Some incredibly kind and, he hopefully saw something in us. He gave us £1 million to do our first investments. And from that, we got our first unicorn. We got our first $70 million exits and that.
So £1 million from your first investor back in 2015?
Yeah.
And what about the 3 years before? How did you live yourself? I mean,
we ran corporate sponsorships, but it was a terrible model because what we were promising them was that, pay us £20,000, and we will, when they don't build companies, you can try and employ them. But of course, the people that we were going after, the founders we were going after, didn't want to work at any of these companies. Yeah. And then they actually built companies and succeeded. So of course they weren't going to work for these companies. So it was a terrible model, and it really didn't scale, and we couldn't invest, and it was just a terrible, terrible business model. And I think we were quite resistant to becoming VCs. We didn't want to become a VC, like that wasn't the plan, which is why we have this very weird corporate structure where we are a company. We run like a company. I'm a CEO of a company, and when we invest off our balance sheet, and we take ownership of every company onto our balance sheet. But it means that we can deliver this incredible product to our customers.
So it's not a fund. You don't have like fund A, B, C, 1, 2, 3.
In the past we did, as we were building up our reputation and building up our results. But now we invest off our balance sheet. So in 2021, we raised $150 million onto our balance sheet. And that was led by an incredible roster of founders like Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn, Patrick and John Collison, the founders of Stripe. And that, now we invest off our balance sheet again. So over the last 10 years, we've done a mixture of investing off our balance sheet and through funds.
When and how was the tipping point from the charity or the non-profit you were talking about and to the, how do you say, commercial
It was really this amazing man taking a risk on us and giving us what was an enormous sum of money for us back then. He gave us £1 million, and at the time we'd been living on about £100,000 a year. So it was a big, big step up. And actually being able to use that capital to invest was incredible.
What happened? How did that happen? I mean...
Well, it's one of those things, isn't it, where it's one of those stories where it's sort of how do you recreate this luck? I got introduced to him... Can
we say who is this? Or
he's a very private guy.
Okay.
I got introduced to him by somebody who didn't even know him. And
all right.
Went and met him for like 20 minutes. We had a nice chat. Didn't hear from him for about a month. And then he invited us for lunch, and then at lunch offered us this money. And it just felt like, it felt like one of those Cinderella stories where, it's sort of too good to be true. But, this is, in some ways, it kind of reinforces one of our deep beliefs about talent investing. It's about investing in people. It's about taking a risk on people who, we were super young. We were very much at the beginning of our careers. We didn't really know anything about VC. And having someone take that risk on us was an absolutely, transformational moment. And I think we've been so lucky to have, and Reid Hoffman, who's been on our board now for 7 years, he invested in EF very, very early on and, was willing to put pretty significant sum of capital behind us to try a model that still at that point everyone thought was crazy.
Do you remember that lunch?
I remember that meeting very well because we went to go and see him at his office at LinkedIn and
no, sorry, the first. Sorry, we'll get back to
the first lunch.
First lunch with the 1 million quid. I mean,
I do remember it very well.
And what did you say with Matt? Like going out of this, like what the fuck happened? Like,
well, it was one of those moments where we just didn't know if we should take it seriously. Because it felt so. We were so on the edge of giving up. It had been such a hand-to-mouth existence. And we were very much, we'd left these, glittering jobs at McKinsey. All of our friends at McKinsey had left and we were off doing incredible, exciting, high-prestige things. And we were running this tiny not-for-profit that was producing 10 companies a year and that no one really took seriously. And that sort of, A, we had no money, but B, just that slog of we've done 3 years and have we wasted our time? Is this all a complete mistake? And having someone actually take us seriously when no one else did was the most incredible feeling. But also we were very skeptical that it was actually true.
And do you understand? Can you explain what happened? I mean, because obviously you're going out of McKinsey, both of you. It's like glamorous, like you're two young, confirmed professional and you're building something great. And then after 3 years, and what you're saying, what I feel is like it's like the big, I mean, you're losing the game, right? It feels like this. What made this guy? What happened? Can you?
I don't know why he did it. He's a very.
But did you have like a flame? Did you have a grant? Did you have like something burning inside, or still like?
I mean, we still wanted to keep going. We still wanted to do it, but it was becoming pretty untenable. That could we keep paying ourselves? Were we wasting our time? Like, one of the questions you often get asked as a founder of now a more mature company is like, what is the most stressful time in your history? And like now things get stressful because I've got a lot of people's jobs on the line. I'm managing, we're managing $750 million worth of capital. That's our AUM. There's a lot on the line, but actually the early days were way, way harder. I think that existential dread in the early days of being a founder where you're like, am I wasting my time? I know that I'm a high potential, smart, ambitious person. Is this just the wrong thing? And I think there's no sort of dread like it and no fear like it.
But was it like, at some point you came to him and said, well, we're going to for profit now. We need £1 million.
No, it was...
Or he said that to you? I mean...
He was going to donate it to the not-for-profit.
Okay.
But it was incredibly complex and we couldn't make it work. And we couldn't scale the not-for-profit. There was no way we'd be able to get out of sort of the cycle of doing 10 companies a year. And, now we're doing 100 companies a year and we would never have been able to do that as a not-for-profit. So he took a big risk on us and we were very grateful.
For the people listening, the way I can explain, you said it's on your balance sheet right now. It's not a fund. So the way a fund works is that there is a company that manages funds, the first fund, then the second fund, and the third fund. And you get like a first fund that will be like, can you say a cluster, like a silo or with maybe 50 million euros. And you will invest those 50 million euros within the next 3-4 years. And you will expect to get back that money and to close the fund after like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years, something like this. And you will send the money back with an expected profit, right? When you put that on your balance sheet, that must, what is the expectation for the people investing in EF right now? What do I get? When do I get? Can you explain it?
Yeah, so the idea is that the investors still get distributions. So as we build and sell companies, and we've exited companies to Meta and Spotify and Twitter, and like as those distributions come in, we can return that capital to investors.
So every time you sell a company, you will distribute to the people who have.
So the way it works is that we will keep enough capital on our balance sheet to enable operations for another year or two. And then anything in surplus of that is distributed to our shareholders.
All right.
But the nice thing for shareholders is if you think about in a fund, you are only getting access to the companies that are invested in for that, say, 3-year active period. The nice thing for investors investing in EF is that they are getting access to everything we have built and everything we will build in the future. So it's an unusual model. I don't think there's any other company or any other fund that's structured in this way. But our investors love it because you're basically able to take a bet, not just on what we're doing today, but on as our brand grows and as our results grow, you're getting access to everything we build in the future.
Interesting. And what is the deal with the companies, with the founders?
So we invest, they get access to $250,000 of investment. We also provide a stipend as they go through the program, or we're now running residencies as well. So we have multiple products now. One is a non-residency. One is a residency which we're running in the US. So young Europeans can apply to go and live in our pretty incredible new house in the Mission in San Francisco.
No way. How big is it?
It's enormous, and it's very cool. It's one of those traditional, San Franciscan Victorian houses. And we pay for your living costs, your food, basically make it as easy as possible for you to just focus on building your company. And then once you've found your co-founder, once you've developed your idea, we then invest $250,000. And then you get access to another 3 months of support to get ready for demo day. And then demo day is in San Francisco with 200 partner level individuals from some of the world's best VCs.
Okay, so it's 8 weeks first. You go in the house for 8 weeks. Yeah. Then if you invest, you get an extra 3 months in the house?
No. Once you get the funding, you then have to survive on your own and find your own place to live.
And what do you get in exchange of the 250K?
So it's structured as 125K for 8%, and then a further 125K as a MFN, which is a kind of convertible note that converts at somewhere around 1% typically.
Okay, so they can give it back to you. Or you can convert, or it's no.
So it's a
it's
like
in the
a
future investment. Yeah. Okay. So you get 8% plus 1. Okay. So at the end, you're slightly about 10% if it works for.
Yeah, it's about 9%.
Yeah, 9. Okay. And what do the founds who comes, because I remember when we used to have that startup studio, most of the founders didn't like really much the startup studios. You know what I'm saying? They were like kind of they have too much on the cap table. Plus, I mean, what the fuck are they doing here, right? Kind of for like 250K. Do they really have 10%? Like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, you don't come to EF for the money. You come for the program and the product that we're providing. Being able to be part of a community where you access your co-founder, you develop your idea. Being able to come to EF as an individual who is pre-company, pre-idea, and leave as somebody who's raised, say, $10 million on a $50 million cap. That is a pretty incredible experience that can happen in somewhere between 3 and 6 months. So the money isn't the main part of our product. I think the issue with studios is if you take 30%, then the founders are pretty diluted already. And then I think that can be hard for seed investors. But we've had the most incredible response from investors in the Bay Area, in San Francisco. We've had our demo days opened by Reid Hoffman, Patrick Collison, Vinod Khosla, these incredible founders. And actually most recently we had Jack Clark, one of the founders of Anthropic, a great European founder in the US. And one of the things that we've seen is that rounds happen so quickly in the US because it's so competitive, because there's so much capital. Rounds get done in about 2 weeks. And we've seen the average valuation double since we've moved the companies from Europe to the US.
So tell me numbers, like what is an average round? How much do they raise? What valuation would be like?
So, I mean, average valuation would be around $20 million now. But
for seed.
For seed. And this is a company that's between 3 and 5 months old. This is, for somebody who started with absolutely nothing. But you see a range of valuations, and at the top end, they can get up to $50, $60 million. And at the top end of how much can you raise, some founders raise $2 million, but you can raise, up to 10 or 15. So the quantity of capital is incredible, but it's also the quality of the investors as well, where pretty much every investor you're working with is a former founder. And not only that, they've invested in multiple billion-dollar companies. But I think, when we think about the European ecosystem as well, one of the things that we're seeing a bunch of our founders do co-led rounds, where they take a incredible European VC alongside incredible US VC. And I think then you really do get access to the best of both worlds.
So if I want to make it, simple, the average round is 4 million for a 20 million valuation. Would that be right?
Sure-ish. But I think one of the questions you need to ask yourself
it can be 2 million for 10 million or 8 million for 40 million, something like this.
Rare that it would be 2 on 10. But the thing I would push you on as well is, do you see yourself as one of the average startups in the batch, or do you see yourself as the standout startup in the batch?
I'm just trying to understand of course, but you would go there to raise on a 50 million valuation probably. And
it doesn't happen for everyone.
But and sometimes it's not that good to raise too much too early, probably, I don't know.
It completely depends where you're at. If you're at the stage where, one of the things we have seen moving the companies to the US is that US customers move so fast. So, from landing, within about 8 weeks, the companies can have somewhere between 100 and 500K of revenue, of ARR.
8 weeks, you said?
Yeah.
Wow.
And America is so capitalist. The profit motive is so strong. And it means that because it's so competitive, companies are very willing to take a risk on new companies that could transform whatever they're doing.
Even clients, I'm not saying, you're not talking about funds now. You're saying...
No. This is clients of the
You go
startups.
out, you're 3 weeks old, you say, get my product. And it's 50K a year. And people say, yeah, sure. I love it.
Yeah, and the best companies we have in the batch, they haven't
You're an
just...
intern, mate.
It's incredible, isn't it? The best companies will actually have the product live within 3 months, from nothing, landing in the US to having a product live that they're being paid for by demo day. And we just don't see that same speed from customers in Europe. And one of our great investors, who's an investor in EF and invests in lots of our companies, Charlie Songhurst, he's on the board of Meta. He's one of the world's best angel investors. I remember him saying to me, which I feel is so true, is that the reason to go to the US is actually for the customers, not for the capital. And it's because, when you think about the culture that you build for your startup, you think it's the founder that sets the culture, but actually it's the customers that set the culture, because if they are moving that fast, you have to move that fast. Whereas if you're in a place where, customers are taking a couple of months, maybe a couple of quarters to make a decision, that's the speed of your company.
Alice, this is very, very important what you're just saying. I think that is where we have to change in Europe, mainly. If we want to make Europe great, it's mainly that you have to believe and trust young entrepreneurs as a client, as a customer, You've
got to take the risk.
Yeah. Because most of the time you're like, okay, make it for free. Or, you're like, no, it's try it.
Yeah. And it won't always work out. And I think we've got to get more okay. We talk a lot about, attitudes to failure and that being one of the challenges for Europe. But I think it really is. And it's not just founders being afraid to fail. It's the customers, the clients of these startups being afraid to fail, being afraid to look bad in front of their boss. And the more that we can kind of remove that fear around experimentation, I think that would really help Europe.
I think it's even more true with all of the AI stuff happening right now. I'm probably sometimes not that good in this area, I have to say. You get those young guys coming around and trying to sell you something, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm too old for this, and but it's we're laughing, but I think it's a drama. So I think we have to take responsibility out of this. It's very interesting. And talking about AI, this has changed a lot, I believe, because I don't know if we talked about Lovable and Anton Osika before recording, and he was sitting in your chair a few months ago, and like last week, just for fun, I built my own URL shortener, right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, like Bitly, and like this is insane. I mean, I'm not able to do that in the real world, right? And you can do bricks like this, like a Lego, everywhere now. How much has it changed your work? Because I believe the competition is bigger in a lot of areas.
Well, I mean, maybe there's more competition, but I think the main thing to focus on is there is an increasing supply of people that want to be founders. EF's mission is to increase the supply of high quality companies that are built every year, create companies that wouldn't otherwise happen. And we have never seen more individuals, more young people wanting to be a founder and seeing founding as not just a viable career path, but an aspirational and desirable career path. And this is such a great thing for the world. And so you say there's more competition, but I think there's greater supply, as in, I'm delighted that there are more people coming in. I'm delighted that there are more early stage investors. I think this is only good for the ecosystem, only good for the world. One of my great fears and one of the things that still motivates me hugely, and one of the kind of founding principles of EF was that so many of the world's most high potential founders, particularly in Europe, get lost to traditional career paths because they're really, really hard to quit. Like, it's really hard to quit that great investment banking job, that hedge fund, because if you are good at your job, they will not let you quit. And one of the things that, when Americans say to me, oh, why doesn't Europe have a Google or whatever? Larry and Sergey would have worked at a hedge fund. Mark Zuckerberg would have become a consultant. These are the kind of careers that are very desirable still and are really, really hard to get out of. And I think people underestimate just how strong the golden handcuffs are. And so if we are now going through this sort of golden era where young people are not even trying those career paths and going straight into founding, I think it's a great thing for the world.
But those same companies and McKinsey and Google and I don't know, Goldman Sachs, they do the same in the US. Why? How come American people just leave and create companies?
Well, it is different in the US. So I think it depends East Coast versus West Coast, and it depends on the university. So, if you go to the Stanford campus, everyone wants to be a founder and everyone is a founder. Everyone's got stealth founder on their LinkedIn and they are building and experimenting with things. And actually those traditional career paths aren't aspirational at all. Also in the US, you have more graduate jobs in big tech companies.
Does the employment security change this thing? Does the fact that the American, they can get fired, or they get fired, from a day to another. It's not the same in Europe. So you're kind of, warm in your job, even with American firms, it's going to cost them a ton of money if they fire you. So maybe they keep you here and you're kind of happy with that.
Maybe, but I suppose we're not looking for the people who are kind of happy with it. You're looking for the people who are sort of frustrated and who are rattling against the chains, but maybe don't see an alternative. And I'm delighted that more and more people are seeing it as an aspirational alternative. So yeah, it's not about turning people into founders. I don't think we should be pushing people who are very happy in their corporate jobs. There are lots of people who shouldn't be founders. Not everyone should be a founder. It's an awful career path. It's one of the hardest, most harrowing career paths you can choose. But there's a bunch of people who should be on that career path, who want that steep learning curve, who want the kind of punishment that comes with being a founder because it is so fulfilling. And it's about how do we get those people to make the leap and to see that actually the opportunity cost is not leaving their job. The opportunity cost is staying in their job. If you've got $1 billion company inside you, if you've got a multi-billion-dollar company inside you, the real cost is staying in your nice, cozy job that your parents are really pleased with or that your friends think is cool. That is the real cost. Because think about the impact you could have on the world. Think about the wealth you could generate and the impact you could have from that wealth. That is the opportunity cost.
The fun thing is that you're not aiming or addressing those people because it's too late. dead to the entrepreneur world, right? I mean, those people who have been working for Google for 10 years, who have like 2 kids, live in Paris, Berlin, or London.
We're going younger. We're a bit younger than that, yeah.
Would there be a kind of entrepreneur first idea to put on the table with those people, like saying, you're experienced, or is it too late? Are they doomed?
I mean, if you look at the data on founders, there's this great book, Super Founders by Ali Tamaseb, who's a VC at DCVC and originally studied at Imperial in London. And it looks at all the data on founders that have built billion-dollar companies. And the data shows that you really can be any age to create a billion-dollar company. But the interesting thing is, if you look at people who do found successfully later in life, it's typically that they've had a bunch of unsuccessful founding journeys beforehand. And so one of the things that I am very keen that we begin talking about in Europe, which seems way more normal in the US, is this idea of a founding career path. You know, you build a company, it doesn't work out. It's totally fine. But you've learned a ton, build another company. Doesn't work out. Totally fine. Build another company. Compound that learning. Whereas I feel like in Europe, we have this whole thing of like, go and work in this completely detached industry, but it's still business, and then use those learnings to start a company. But the learnings you get from a big business, that's about optimization. It's about impressing your boss. It's not actually about like the creative inception of a company that is yours. And so I think more this idea that founding may take 2, 3, 4, 5 attempts. You know, you don't win a gold medal at the Olympics on your first time necessarily. It's something that you build expertise and muscle in. And the same needs to be how we think about founding.
Yeah, I think I've seen the statistics a couple of years ago about like the chances you have to succeed on your third company. They're like huge. I mean, like huge.
Yeah.
Even if you failed the first 2 ones. So it's interesting. The other fun thing is that's maybe my feeling, but you tell me if I'm wrong. You were saying like what you're looking is technical background. I want to go back on that later on. Action, speed, aggressiveness,
Aggression.
Playing to win, get a market, destroy everything else. And to what I understand on Alice, when you left going for a non-profit, and to where you're succeeding right now, big time, right? I don't know if, I mean, you were that kind of person, were you?
No, and I think this is the point. It's that we are brought up in a certain way in Europe, and I'm raising my kids in the US now, and like they are brought up in a different way in the US. The school system is different. The kind of things they value are different, and so it's working out like how are those emerging behaviors displayed, and then how do we amplify them? How do we give permission for those behaviors to exist? Because I'm incredibly ambitious and have always been, and have always wanted work to be a large part of my life and a large part of what I do, and something that, you know, excites and motivates me. But when I was growing up, the word ambition, particularly for a woman, was a really dirty word. Like that was not something that I would have expressly said.
Yeah, if you go back in your technical background, action, speed, aggression, or playing to win, get a market, destroy everything, that's typically masculine terminology, right?
Very masculine. But also I think a lot of it, you know, it's just not how we would talk about it in Europe. And it's not that we don't have that as Europeans, it's just that we have either suppressed those behaviors or present them in a different way.
And in your role now, Alice, at EF, you guys, all of you, is part of your job trying to permit to let people, like a young woman coming to you, and just let them do that?
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
do you have to give them the authorization, like hey, babes, wake up, like you're that kind of person. You have the technical background. I can feel the action, but let yourself be that person. Is it something you do? Like coaching?
Tomorrow I'm in London and I'm doing a lunch with all the female founders that are on the current cohort, and this will be one of the things that I talk about. But I think the most important bit is being part of a cohort of people who are like you and who are all going through that same process of actually trying to understand who they are and what motivates them. And, you know, it's this concept of mimetic desire, where, you know, mimesis is all about ultimately what you want will be dependent on who you surround yourself by. And if you've grown up in a European context, like you will be pushed to care about and desire certain things. And I think part of the process of growing up is actually trying to work out what your genuine desire is and who you are genuinely rather than who you've been shaped to be. And again, this is why like spending time in the US is so important, because you might go there and be like, actually, screw this. I don't want, like, this is not who I am and I don't want to do this. And that's totally fine. Or it might be going out there and saying, actually, I really like the way that they do this thing. And I'm going to actually use my experience of seeing this as a way to develop that part of myself. And I've changed since I've gone to the US. Like I feel like the way that I behave and the way that I think is different. And I found that really useful. And I'm not planning on being in the US forever. I want to come back to Europe. And I'm going to bring that way of thinking back with me as well. So yeah, being a founder is a journey of self-exploration and trying to work out, because your job becomes such an enormous part of your life and your role as a founder becomes so much part of who you are as well. What we're trying to do at EF is help people speedrun that journey of actually understanding who they are in relation to a co-founder and what they really want to achieve. What is their life's purpose? What do they really want? One of the things I find, we work with American graduates now as well. And one of the things that I do find interesting is that when you ask a European, what do they want to achieve? They talk about impact, but often can't quite pin down what that means. If you talk to an American, they talk about wealth creation. And again, it's such an important difference because I think ultimately they're probably both talking about the same thing, which might actually just be power. They both just want to, they're both megalomaniacs and they're trying to achieve power.
Impact and wealth creation is power at the end of the day, right?
Someone could say they want to have impact and you could assume that means not for profit, but actually what they're talking about is, I want to impact billions of people's lives every day. That is megalomania. That's not what, that's not what everyone wants.
But is megalomania good?
In a founder, yes.
Yeah.
There's, if you think about what being a founder is, you need to want to influence people. You need to believe that your point of view in some way is right. My co-founder, Matt, has this amazing piece on the history of ambition where he basically argues that megalomania has always been important in the people that have influenced the world. And previously, it was expressed through war often, whereas now, most of the many of the megalomaniacal individuals in the world are building companies and having impact that way. And this is a positive shift for humanity. But yeah, if you think about, a founder, one of the other things we look for is high personal exceptionalism. So this is the idea that
high personal exceptionalism.
Yeah, they believe they are exceptional. They believe they are different to everyone else. And this is not sufficient to succeed, but it is necessary. You can be super smart, super ambitious, but if you don't believe your odds of success are different to everyone else's, you're never going to make it. And it's amazing how many founders I see who I think are so good, but there is 10% of their brain that is trying not to fail. And if you are making decisions to prevent failure, you will never succeed. And again, this is one of the differences that I see in the US where they play to win with absolutely no backup. I love that. They are Icarus. They fly very close to the sun and sometimes it works. And they would much rather fly close to the sun, get burnt and fall in the sea than to never have tried because one of them will fly past the sun. And again, it's that level of risk-taking and sort of aggression that we don't necessarily have in the same way as in Europe.
It's very hard to get back to this exceptionalism, which is quite close to megalomania somehow, because at some point you're like people around me could have tell me in the past, or sometimes like you're kind of megalomaniac or something like this, and I would just say no, I'm just trying to get big things done, right? I mean, and I'm not like Elon Musk at the end of the day, right? But you don't like when people tell yourself as megalomaniac, So do you have sometimes people coming in and say, yeah, I'm a fucking megalomaniac, right?
No, no one says that. In the same way that, no one says I'm a psychopath. But it's more you can see how they think and, I do think this impact thing is really amusing because wanting to impact people's lives, it is a form of megalomania. But it's very rare people self-classify as a megalomaniac. It's very, people also don't walk around saying I have high personal exceptionalism. But actually, if you push people really hard, you can get them to acknowledge that they feel that they are different to everyone else. And not that they're better, but they have better chances, better odds of success. And you might interpret this as arrogance, but it's not really arrogance. It's sort of a quiet belief very strong belief in themselves.
If I put it this way, it's like you'd rather invest in people that have very, very high expectations and maybe small chances to go there, but bigger than other ones, right? Than someone who has very low expectation and very high chances to get there. Like, I don't know, I can run the 100 meters in 13 seconds, right? But I will not get money out of it. But if I can make it in under 10 seconds, maybe you like what I'm doing, right?
Yeah, ultimately, the kind of venture capital is about winners and creating big companies. And one of the things I love about our model is that, not everyone with EF ends up building a massive company because it's really, really hard. But because we're producing so many companies a year, actually one of the most frequent paths for people who don't make it is either they do EF again, or they end up being one of the first employees for one of the companies that is growing really fast. So we have this amazing sort of talent recycling. And again, if they don't make it, often they'll join one of our companies for a couple of years and then go back and do it again and try founding again.
Do you have to pay to go on EF? No, you get paid.
No, we just pay you.
Okay,
yeah.
That's good. It's a dream comes true, right?
It is a dream come true.
At some point, if I am an investor, I could think like, you know what, he's going through EF and it's not the hard way, they've been nurtured to they've been like, like babies and how do you call it, biberon? Like,
drinking from a bottle?
Yeah. What, oh yeah, okay. Is it? In French, we have a term for the bottle for the babies.
Oh, I don't think we do in English.
Okay. But yeah, somehow, is it something people say about like the people coming through EF now?
No, I mean, Y Combinator has normalized supporting first-time founders. And I think what people forget is like fundraising in San Francisco, there is a process that works. And there are many processes that don't work. But the process that works is not obvious. And so a founder is at a massive disadvantage if they just don't know the process and they don't know the people. So if you don't have the network and you don't know what you're doing, you are on a massive back foot and you won't get a great outcome.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, sometimes VCs will push me and go, all the companies are so beautifully polished, it's hard to tell which is the great one. And I'm like, well, that is your job. Your job. My job is not to tell you which is the great company. Your job is to work it out. My job is to make sure every founder has a great chance of raising the very best capital from the very best investor by helping them understand what does great look like. Which is, it's hard. There's only so much that you can read on the internet, and there's a lot you can read on the internet. But having a coach basically that can take you through that process and help you exactly understand, okay, this co-founder isn't right for you. This investor isn't right for you. This is where your pitch sucks. This is the story that you need to tell. Like it is invaluable because there is a playbook. And one of the things I would say as well is like VCs in the US are used to seeing very polished founders who have been in the ecosystem for a long time. So if you come in as a super fresh European, it doesn't always land very well. Because there are ways of communicating your story that are different in the US compared to Europe. And the founders that we take out often fundraise, both in Europe and the US, and they say the questions they get are completely different. One of the things that always surprises founders when they go to the US is US VCs often will spend an inordinate amount of time asking about your childhood and focusing on your childhood trauma. And they may not even ask you about your business. And that is something that does not happen in Europe in the same way. And so it's just helping them understand like what to expect and then how to nail those conversations.
What childhood trauma you would like as a US VC?
I mean, we don't ask people about their childhood trauma. Do
you know what they're digging?
They're trying to look for determination, resilience. Being a founder is hard, and they don't want, they want somebody who has experienced hard things in the past. But it's amazingly consistent. Like when I always ask VCs, what do you look for in founders? And it's great market, great team, and then the other thing they always mention is childhood trauma. And they will ask questions like, what is your relationship like with your father? What was the toughest experience you had growing up? So it's pretty direct questions. Well, coming back to megalomania, I've done a little bit of digging on trying to work out like why this is important. And from my limited reading, I'm not a psychologist or psychotherapist, in limited reading, childhood trauma is gives you an intense feeling of powerlessness as a child that you never want to experience again. And so one of the ways to adapt that is to build a desire for power, to become a megalomaniac, so that you never have that sort of horrific powerless feeling again. And so again, megalomania, we come back to megalomania.
Have you ever heard about that book called The Road Less Traveled?
No.
Wow, you love it. You have to read that.
I will put it on my list.
Yeah. It was actually... have you heard about Carlos Ghosn?
No.
Carlos Ghosn, he used to be the CEO of Renault, right?
Ah, okay.
And he flew away from Japan in a suitcase. Do you remember that story?
Yes, I do remember
right?
the story,
So
yeah.
we had the chance to record with Carlos Ghosn
I'll have to listen to it.
last year. Well, you speak French.
Tiny bit, very badly.
Okay. We should translate it, I think.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah. And speaking of a megalomaniac, even in a good sense, he's probably this kind of person at some point. And I was very, very surprised that he recommended that book at the end of the podcast, because I was like, because I'm reading it right now, and it's a lot about like childhood traumas, psychotherapy, and I'm like, this guy really, like, he's talking about psyche and going into therapy and doesn't fit well, but I think it's interesting what you're just saying. What are your childhood traumas, Alice?
That's a much longer podcast. I'll get my teenage diaries out.
Have you ever? I mean, you've probably thought about it since people are asking all of your founders.
I mean, yes, but I think I've been very lucky to have a very happy life, and yeah, I don't know what I would point to.
What I've heard, I'm not going into that deeply, don't worry. But when you said earlier on, your father was in special forces, right?
Yeah.
And your mother was a doctor. You were born and raised in an excellence environment somehow, right?
Yeah, for sure. My parents are absolutely wonderful, but also quite hardcore. They work incredibly hard and are very impressive people.
Was it good or not? Are you hardcore with your kids?
Am I hardcore with my kids? No, I mean, my parents were never hardcore with me. I think they were incredibly gentle, but it's about what's role modeled, right? And I think I was brought up in a household where, we didn't quit things, and hard work and dedication was the expectation, but not through, they were very, very gentle with me. I think it was more around they role modeled through their own careers and their own behaviors, high discipline, high determination, and, dedication to being good at whatever they wanted to apply themselves to.
If we get back to the people who don't have the playbook. So if I'm 18 right now, I'm an 18 years old young woman, just got my, bachelor or whatever it is, baccalaureate in French. And I'm thinking about, launching companies. You said earlier on, you kind of have some 18 years old candidates.
We do. I mean, not, it's probably 5% of what we do, but yes, but it's becoming increasingly common.
So what is the playbook? You have you're on TikTok, you have 1 minute.
What's the playbook? Well, obviously, first of all, join EF, find the right co-founder, keep experimenting with ideas until you find something that you feel real pull from your customer and that you want to build. Go to the US, make sure you understand how to run a great fundraise, raise capital, build out product, generate revenue, build more, raise more money, build faster. I mean, the product that we are most excited about, which is new for 2026, is that we are now running this residency called The Bridge in San Francisco. So I would encourage this young woman to apply. She gets to live with 48 other fantastic young people at the beginning of their founding careers, gets to find her co-founder, gets a ton of help and support, and then gets the opportunity to raise from some of the world's best investors. And in terms of having a great starting point for her founding career, you really can't get better than that.
Okay. And who shouldn't apply?
Who shouldn't apply? if you think startups are kind of cool and you want to be part of the kind of like cool kids, we call them the startup fanboys, who are sort of like floating around the edges of startups and are constantly talking about it, but will never actually do it. Don't apply.
Okay. What is the biggest misconception about startups?
Biggest misconception? I think the 996 thing is interesting because I'm intrigued that it's sort of this new thing of like, 996. But
so 996, we got back from China. It's probably a Chinese origins, I don't know, but it's from 9 in the morning to 9 p.m., 6 days a week, right?
A week.
Okay.
But I love the idea that this is new. I mean, my early career was 996. And I think the misconception is that it's new. I think the thing is that startups are just really hard work. And any sort of view that it is a positive lifestyle choice, it's probably the most negative lifestyle choice you could make, as in it's so all-consuming. And if you want to be great at it, if you want to be one of the best in the world at it, it will dominate everything you do. And I would compare it again to, trying to win a gold medal at the Olympics. I think there's probably more cultural understanding, particularly in Europe, that if you said, I'm going to try and win a gold medal at the 100 meters at the Olympics, everyone would understand you are going to be running and training for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, 7 days a week, 362 days a year. But when you're a founder and you're trying to do the same thing, I think there's less acceptance that is okay. It's like, they're obsessed with work, it's very unhealthy. Whereas you're trying to do something that is as hard as winning a gold medal at the Olympics. And so, I think the misconception is that you can do this in any way as a lifestyle job. Yeah. It is your lifestyle. It is your life. And
like a 996 is kind of necessary.
It's kind of necessary. But you should see that, going back to your earlier question about fun. That should be fun because you're obsessed with what you're doing. You get to choose what you work on.
Plus, at some point, tell me if I'm wrong, but a 996 doesn't mean a 996 in front of your computer. I mean, it also means sometimes you are just meeting clients. Sometimes you're just maybe, running in the morning, thinking about your business. I don't know. It's just a 99. You're just obsessed with the idea, is it?
Yeah. I think one of the big changes for me leaving consulting was that when I, was working in a corporate career and I only did it for 2 years, you would get that moment where you'd go on holiday and you're like, great, I don't need to think about this anymore. Like my brain is going to switch off and like stop thinking about this. And I think the joy of being a founder is that there's never a point where I'm like, stop thinking about this. It's a joy to wallow in this thing that I've created. And the joy of having a co-founder where you can collectively wallow in this, this idea that you're exploring.
Does it still need a balance somehow? I mean, like sometimes just cut from the idea, just go on holidays, or sometimes just go outside and run or go to the gym? Or is it important to have can I say work-life balance or work-work balance, but you know what I'm saying?
It's a marathon and a sprint. It's a marathon made up of sprints. And when I was first building EF, me and my co-founder Matt, we'd often be like, this is the silver bullet. When this thing happens, it's all going to get easier. And it's never got easier. It's just different challenges. And I think I now have more maturity and perspective to deal with those challenges. And it's generally less stressful because I have more perspective. But you need to stay healthy. You need to have enough gas in the tank to be able to run for a really long time. But I don't think there's any way that you can make it a positive lifestyle choice. And, now I've got little kids, it's obviously much harder. And balancing family and work is really tough. And there's kind of no way around that. But it's working out like, what are the things that you are going to prioritize? Like you talk about going for runs or exercise. Like I'm definitely in a phase of my life where I probably should be exercising, but I'm allocating my exercise time to my kids. So, you're constantly making trade-offs and you have to work out if that's the right trade-off for you. I mean, one of the things I would say that was really great for me is I started EF when I was 25. I'm now 39 and I'm so glad I started young because I did when I was young. I just worked all the time. And I think trying to do that alongside, kids and all the rest of it now would be very, very hard. But I think, most young founders and maybe particularly young women think, I don't have enough experience. I need to gather, more years under my belt, more network, more cash, whatever it may be. I think it's a real opportunity cost to not starting young and just getting stuck in and like making those mistakes. And, I'm now at the point where I can afford a nanny and, all of those sort of things that make life easier. And so, I would particularly encourage young women to think about starting earlier because I think they are less likely to do so. And I think it's more important for them to do so. My
point about, I agree 100%, but my point was about sports and, food and sleep are three pillars that are quite important if you want to be to have a clear thinking most of the time, right?
I've done last year, 2025, I did a big push on my sleep personally, and because I was just sleeping appallingly and have done for a very long time. But the challenge for me is that I'm constantly jet lagged. I run a company that is across 3 continents and 3 time zones. And that is really punishing. And the least favorite part of my job is how much I have to travel. But if you want to run a international business, if you want to run a business that can, really succeed in your industry, travel is always going to be a part of it. I try and be good with food. And I now have, used ChatGPT to come up with an amazing supplement regime for me, which has been amazing. It is hard. It is a constant balance of trying to keep healthy, but also running as fast as you can to build something in a market that's moving really fast.
So tomorrow you will be having lunch in London with those young women, right?
Yeah, I'm working in London tomorrow.
So what are you going to tell them? What are the keywords that unlocks the power within them?
I think the key thing is to help them feel comfortable with their level of ambition, and to give them words to express that level of ambition, that it's okay to say things like, you want to build a $10 billion company and that you believe you can. It's okay to say things like you want to be one of the most successful founders in the world. It's okay to say that you want to have an enormous impact on people's lives and create enormous wealth through that process as well. So it's, it's probably sharing many of the anecdotes that I've shared through this podcast. But it's about having that conversation and showing that it's nothing to be embarrassed about.
You just talked about ChatGPT and your supplements with it? What is your daily use of AI? On what specific topics and how much?
It just increases every week. I find new ways to use it. For a long time, I was just using it to proofread stuff, to throw in a bunch of thoughts, and for it to write stuff for internal documents. But now I basically use it as a substitute for Google. So anything that isn't like, what time does this restaurant open, or something that could be answered by Google Maps, or shopping, that all still goes into Google. But pretty much everything else goes into ChatGPT. So if you are trying to find a piece of information, I just find it is easier to use a conversational format through ChatGPT. I love it for health stuff. Uploading my blood work and then getting it to recommend supplements. My sleep has been terrible, having had 2 small kids and lots of jet lag. Getting it to come up with a really tight regime. And who else is going to talk to me at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep? So what else have I been using it for recently? I love the voice function, like being able to just dictate updates, for internal updates in the company, or Slack messages that I want to send to people, just being able to go for a walk, try and get some exercise in, try and get some sunlight. And instead of being sat at my desk typing, being able to just go for a walk and get it transcribed. So it's probably the most used app on my phone. Maybe Slack still, and WhatsApp would be number 1 and 2, but it's probably the next after that.
All right. ChatGPT, is it? Or?
Yeah, I use ChatGPT.
Okay. Gemini a bit? No? Not that much?
A bit. I think, I've just got embedded in ChatGPT at this point.
All right.
See, there was a funny moment the other day where I asked it to write something for me, and it said at the end, would you like this in Alice's voice or Matt's voice, my co-founder? And I said, who's Matt? And it said, we have no idea. I don't know who Matt is. It's just a generic male name. And I was like, this is my co-founder's name. And it eventually admitted to me that it did know both who I was and who my co-founder was, which was one of the more sort of surprising moments. But yeah, otherwise I do love it.
All right. Do you have any kind of favorite prompt, something you love to use, or? way of using it?
I'm probably reasonably relaxed on the prompts, maybe because I've used it so much. I find it's pretty good at knowing what I want. The one that I've been trying recently that I saw someone else put on X was giving it different IQs. So you are IQ of 120, 140, and you get different answers and different levels of sophistication, which is fun. But I'm quite a lazy prompter. I find it does a pretty good job. It might just be because I've done so much in it.
Did you personalize your parameters, right? Did you put a personal prompt?
I did it, but a while back now, and I actually can't remember what's in it.
Mine is very rude with me now.
Oh yeah, tell me.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll send it to you.
Mine's still too sycophantic.
No more smileys, no more like follow-up questions, no more like. And now it talks to me, and my daughter was like, "What the fuck did you do with your ChatGPT?" And like, it's not very nice. Like, can you? The first time she talked to it she said, "I saw the exchange," and it said, "What happens to you?" And said, "Nothing." It said, "Yeah, you're being rude." And said, "Well, I believe your father told me that he doesn't want any more like crap." She was like, "Oh boy." Okay, I've heard you were raising money right now. Is that true?
We can't talk about it right now, but yes, hopefully we'll have some exciting news soon.
How big is Entrepreneur First now? I mean, how many companies? What's the valuation?
So we've got 500 seed-funded companies. We now work with about 400 individual founders every year.
So 500 seeded. So that means alive or?
Yeah, companies that have gone through seed funding and that are growing.
And out of how many did you found? What is the fail rate or?
A ton. It's not a metric we necessarily track. As in, the most important thing is always, how big are the winners and how big is the portfolio. If you look at the world's most successful VCs, they have both the highest win rate and the highest loss rate. Right. Because you're, as we were talking about, trying to get under that 10-second mark in the 100 meters, you're looking for the founders who are taking massive moonshots.
Okay. So you said 15 billion valuation.
Yeah.
That's your 500 companies, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And how do you evaluate that? I mean, it must be kind of...
Well, it's very simple in that we take the market valuation. So the price of their last round, and then you add all of those together and you get to 15 billion.
Okay. What are the biggest ones?
Big companies. So some of our biggest companies already mentioned Clio, which is this fintech app that is now making, I think, about $350 million of ARR a year, is EBITDA profitable, and again has this great model where they're building in the UK for the US market. Got a great company called Aztec, which is one of the leading zero-knowledge protocols for Ethereum, that was funded by Andreessen Horowitz.
All right.
Got one of our companies that raised recently, a company called Poly AI. They've raised more than $200 million. They're one of the leading voice services, AI voice services for customer service. So they work with Hilton and FedEx, and their product is amazing. They have all these amazing recordings of customers using the product and going, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were AI, but now I've realized you're a human, that it's actually AI."
Oh, wow.
So we have a very broad range of companies that, Clio is B2C, Aztec is Web3, Poly AI is B2B SaaS. And again, it goes back to this idea that we will invest in whatever interesting people are interested in.
So would you still invest in Web3 now?
Yeah, if we found somebody who had an interesting and contrarian point of view on it, for sure. And all of our best Web3 investments, we've got another big company in the Web3 space that does distributed compute using the blockchain called Jensen, that's funded by Andreessen Horowitz as well. And again, these companies were built pre the kind of 2021 hype in Web3. And often we find that with these emerging technologies, it's investing pre-hype where you get some of the best companies. But then we've got some amazing new companies coming through. A really exciting one that just announced their round, Radical AI. They were funded by Cosa Ventures recently. And this is a company that is enabling you to personalize your cancer care. They have access to some of the largest data sets for cancer treatment in the US. And it allows you to actually compare how different drugs will affect you. And that's founded by a British, I think she's 22 now, 22-year-old founder. She's raised millions of dollars of funding, is working with some of the biggest healthcare institutions in the US, and is backed personally by Vinod Khosla and his fund, and Vinod is one of the world's best founders and investors. So yeah, I mean, when I look at the companies that are coming through as well, we have a lot of very exciting young Europeans who are absolutely smashing it.
What is your favorite fail?
Favorite fail? Personal fail?
Well, both in the company or as an investor, or
favorite? Oh my goodness.
Maybe something you like with EF, you invested, you believed so much it would work, but there is no regret it didn't.
Oh, I mean, tons. I never regret putting money into a company. That's part of the deal, right? The part of the deal as an investor is that this founder is going to be working their butt off for something that they really want to exist. And if it fails, it was way worse for them than it is for me. So I never regret an investment. And I think the other thing is I can see for many of them that in another world, in a different time, maybe if they'd taken some slightly different decisions, they would have succeeded. And that this failure is actually just a stepping stone to another great company. So I don't regret any of the investments. I'm
talking about regrets, but I'm thinking I don't know, maybe you've invested in some companies that have raised millions and millions and then just failed. Did this happen?
Yes. Yeah. I don't want to name and shame, even though it shouldn't be a shame, because actually some of these founders have gone on to then build great companies afterwards. But yeah, I don't think it's fair to call out individuals.
Okay. Have you missed some real big names? Some people just who presented themselves to EF and just you didn't accept them and they created amazing big companies?
Yeah, one or two. And often when we've made mistakes, it's because we've said not yet rather than no. And their process of committing to founding has happened a lot faster than we thought. And those ones always irk me. We shouldn't make those kind of mistakes. And that's, one of the reasons I love our model is, we can take so much risk. We can invest really, really early. But, the job of my team is to stay really close to people as they're thinking about considering founding and making sure that we have a really strong relationship with them so that we can help them at the point where they do decide to found.
Do you have those skills we talked about earlier on, those skills as an entrepreneur in your blood, in your body, or can you get them? I mean, people listening to us, even older people, like Michael Bloomberg founded Bloomberg. He was 39 or something like this. So you can be late, but can you grow them inside you? Can you just become that person?
The nature versus nurture question. You have to have the starting points. I don't know a lot about genetics, but sort of gene expression. I think you can put people in environments that enable them to unlock something they have in them. But if they don't have it at all, that's also totally fine. As lots of people aren't wildly ambitious. Lots of people think, why would I want to destroy myself to found a company when I can actually live a great life? And that is a totally fair point of view, and I respect that point of view. That's a great way to live. So I think so much of my belief around spending time in America versus Europe is that it's about helping these people who do have these things unlock them. So, bias to action, it's understanding what great looks like. One of the critiques I hear from US investors when I ask them about investing in Europeans and what they think about investing in Europeans is they're often polite and they'll say things like, European founders are methodical and they are great at product and they are very into planning. And basically what they're saying is
they're not hungry.
They're slow. They're focusing on the wrong things. And the founders think they're focusing on the right things, but they're planning in months and quarters, not days and hours. And so I think bias to action, there are lots of people that we can help have an even more explicit bias to action just by showing them what great looks like, showing them how high the bar is. And aggression, you know, that's something that I think it's not something that is valued in Europe and within a European context. And not everyone wants to behave that way, and I get that. But it's helping people understand that what good looks like and what great looks like, and if you want to compete with American companies, how you might need to behave. So yeah, I do believe that nurture is a really important part of it. And again, it's kind of mimesis. Who are you surrounded by? Who are you getting your influences from? I strongly, strongly believe that is part of how you unlock people and help them understand what great looks like.
Have you ever had revelations in your life or in some of your founders' life? I don't know. I'm thinking about probably two things in my own journey. One was actually, you know, Tony Robbins. Have you heard? Yeah. So, more recently, these French, you were talking a lot about gold medals, French gold medalists back in 92. So that's very old, but he was like the French famous skier at the time called Edgar Gros-Piron. And he just explained me here on this podcast, you cannot become gold medalist if you didn't decide it. There's no chance. It will never happen. You have to decide to become a gold medalist if you want to get there. And so it's all about intention, right? And at some point, it changed a lot of things in my way of thinking. It's just like, okay, I want this with my company, with my podcast, with my content, with my team. I have to choose to go there, right? And did you have some kind of tipping points in your career, or recently, or not that recently?
I strongly believe in what you're saying, and it's sort of the planning to succeed rather than planning to fail. You know, what I am excited about at the moment is I think I can build Entrepreneurs First into one of the most valuable companies that comes out of Europe, and you know we're HQ'd in the UK. And that is my intention. Is I think I can turn this into a $10 billion company, and I'm really excited to do that.
How do you do that? Does that mean more founders?
Yeah, we're going to grow. More founders, different products. For a long time, we were a kind of single product company, and over the last couple of years, we you know, the core of EF is helping people at the very beginning of their journey, finding co-founders, developing ideas, and you know, last year we experimented with a program for second-time founders. Lots of founders who'd been through EF, you know, exited their company to, you know, various other big tech companies, and we're coming back second time round. And so when I think about EF, it's partly different formats and for different customers. So we're experimenting with residencies and investing a lot of money in that this year. And so yes, it's more, but for different profiles, different customer profiles. And, you know, one of the big unlocks is moving many of the companies to America and having exposure to the US, which has just fast-tracked everything that we're doing.
Have you ever thought about, I'm obsessed with content, but filming that house over there?
You would not imagine how many approaches we get from different production companies who are like, this could be a great reality TV show. And I was actually at an EF summer party in London last year, and a woman followed me into the loo, and she was like, I just wanted to corner you to say, can we film this? And I said no. Yeah, I think, you know, what we do it is crazy. And, you know, one of the reasons why we build such strong co-founder relationships is because EF is really hard. It's a grueling process. It's super intense. There's tears from everyone. Yeah, I think it would make great TV. Not sure that would be the best thing for the founders, though.
I'm sure it would at the end. I don't know. We talked about it last year with, you know, EXA in France, Thibaut. And then we talked also with Roxane Varza at Station F and about a TV show. And I think anyway, if you do that at some point, there's one person you should do that with. That's us. Definitely. Not TV producers. That's the web. It has to be online. It has to be different. I'm serious. But
we should continue this conversation.
Yeah. I think it would be very, very interesting.
Well, the one reason I would do it is that there is still so much mystery around the actual process of being a founder and what is it like, what does it actually feel like in a way that isn't sensationalized. So yeah, I can see.
You know why I'm serious about doing it with the right people is that a TV producer will want drama. What we would want is learnings, and that's different. I don't give a shit about drama. I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, if we can get some dramas and breakups and everything, it's interesting.
Yeah, because, I mean, that's baked into our model, yeah.
Yeah, obviously. Do you remember, have you heard about that show called Startup? It was 10 years ago. Michael Bloomberg.
Yes, I vaguely remember this. Yeah.
It was a company called Gimlet Media that has been bought at the end by Amazon, if I'm not Amazon, I think so. And I mean, I think it's the first episode or second one, he's interviewing Chris Sacca, you know that American investor, and his pitch, I mean, he's trying to raise money, and it's like, you're like, this is never going to happen. You listen to this guy, and after a few episodes, he's trying to, he's a journalist, right, from NPR, and he's trying to negotiate with his future partner, like the shares, the equity. And he goes like, yeah, I like that guy. He's talking with his wife, and his future partner is talking with his wife, and they're like, yeah, I like that guy. I think he's going to come. Well, I've been working for a few months, so I'm going to give him I'm going to be cool with him. I'm going to give him 10%. And the other guy's like, yeah, I really want to work with him. And it's fair that he gets more than I do. So I think he should get 51. And you're like, it's never going to work. And the whole thing is very interesting because it's working at the end. So yeah.
Well, let's chat.
Yeah. Great. So, what do we tell to the people who are listening to? You obviously have to speak English. The people who are listening to this episode in French, in translated version, are just, hey mate, just talk English, right?
I cannot wait to hear myself in fluent French. Yeah, you've got to talk English. You've got to speak English.
How good can it be? Like, it has to be perfect.
The better the English, the better your chances of succeeding.
Is my English good enough?
You're great. You're doing a great job. Your English is way better than my French.
Yeah, she says no. You come on. Yeah, right. Okay.
Unfortunately, that is one of the bars that you have to meet if you want to build an international company, and you should be trying to build an international company. I would encourage you to speak English with your co-founder from day one, even if you're both French. You
said technical skills or technical backgrounds. What does that mean? Can I be from a business school? It's not enough? Can I?
It's a full spectrum, right? As in, we've got a very successful founder who just raised an incredible round, who comes from a kind of politics background and is not technical. So it is a spectrum. The thing that I push everyone on is that if you are building a software company, you need to understand what's possible. So if you are the CEO, you need to understand what is possible from the product you're building. So you have to be interested in technology. But we work with people from, PhD backgrounds who are deeply, deeply technical, all the way through to kind of self-taught coders. Now, the kind of tools that are available now to build products, as you were saying with Lovable, it's never been easier to build that first prototype. But I think ultimately you have to be interested in technology. You have to be interested in building a technical product and getting your head around that. So yeah, I would say 80% of the people we work with have pretty decent technical skills. They're builders at their core.
Do you have to be obsessed by AI right now?
I mean, it's like saying, do you need to be obsessed by the internet in the early 2000s? Like everything is going to be AI. It's just the technology of the future. When I first started EF, you had mobile specific VCs, i.e. investors that invested in mobile apps. And now that would be crazy. And in the same way that, a couple of years ago, you had AI specific VCs, and now that is just the default technology of our time. So whatever you are building, you will be building it with AI. It will have some AI component. There's no way to get around it.
Is there an AI bubble?
I mean, things are spicy right now, and we can see that looking at the behavior of seed stage investors, it is really hard to get into deals, and it's pushing prices up, and companies are just moving very, very fast. Is there a bubble? I mean, when I look at our companies, they are typically selling into enterprises with pretty significant annual contracts. And so, yes, they are getting high prices, but it's sticky revenue. You know, it's revenue that's going to hang around. It's not very thin, not this kind of thin revenue that everyone cares about. So I would say it is hot right now. And I'm sure that there is going to be a refinement of the startups that are built in this period because, you know, they're not all going to survive. But I don't think there's necessarily a bubble because enormous companies are going to be built during this era.
Enormous
companies. And so again, like the loss rate doesn't matter. All that matters is that you, as an investor, get in the biggest and the best.
Earlier on, you said that you would try new things with EF and actually second-time founders. I thought you were about to say later investments. What I'm saying is that it would be interesting for you to have like kind of a follow-up envelope, right? And to be able to get into the companies where you invested 250K, to be able to put another 2 million if it grows.
So we do have this.
You do have this already?
So I suppose actually our full offer is, you know, you get 250K up front, but you can get to up to a further $3 million in follow-on funding. You also get $600,000 of credits with OpenAI and Anthropic and GitHub and other firms. But we do have a follow-on fund that takes our pro rata in our companies as they get to Series A. So it's a great way for us to continue our relationship with the companies. And we typically find our alumni, when they're raising their Series A, they come back to us for introductions, support on their pitch, support on their deck.
You know what the next step is? You should go for a kind of an ETF where I could put money myself in every single company going out of Entrepreneur First. That would be interesting.
We can sign you up for that now.
Yeah. That would be. I don't know if the calculation is good. Would it be good? Yeah,
it would be great. Yeah, it'd be great.
Okay, interesting. You wouldn't need any VC anymore after that, probably. So cool. You've talked about several books. You wrote a book yourself. A few years ago. So what is called, I'll have it here. It's How to Be a Founder.
How to Be a Founder. Yeah, which goes through a lot of the stuff we've been talking about around co-founders and ideas and getting started and fundraising. And my co-founder Matt and I wrote it during the pandemic. And yeah, it's had a great reception, won a bunch of awards. And yeah, so if you're listening to this, buy a copy and dig in.
I've read that Matt is getting into politics a bit, right now?
So Matt has been supporting the British government on their AI policy. He was instrumental to running the first AI safety summit in 2023 with the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak at the time. And then he was the AI, I don't know if we call them the AI czar, what's the word? AI advisor to Keir Starmer for the most recent government.
All right.
So yeah, Matt is very committed to supporting and working out how we can build AI in Europe. And so, you know, we're between us, we are very committed to this idea of, you know, building the bridge as a way to make Europe a fantastic place to build AI companies.
He's still in the house? In EF?
In EF.
Still, yeah. He's still working with you.
We don't live together. Sometimes people think we're married. We're not married.
Sorry. I was meaning that was
he's still in the office.
In the office, yeah. Okay. He used to be the CEO.
He did.
You are now.
He did, yeah. We changed 3 years ago. So a couple of things. One, he wanted to spend more time in politics and doing this kind of stint of work with the government. We also changed the strategy to focus more on the US, and I was keen to move to the US and kind of champion that strategy. And honestly, we've been doing this for a really long time. You know, we've been working together for 13, 14 years. And I think for both of us, he's now in the chairman role. I think for both of us, it's been really reinvigorating, changing role. My role, you know, I'm now working on different things. I'm having to think about different things, and it's exciting. I love it. So yeah, it's been a bit of a change, but I think it's been a really positive change for both of us. And yeah, we've always worked very, very closely together, and we've had a fantastic co-founder relationship for a really long time and worked very productively together. And, you know, that hasn't changed.
Do you have hard times?
Yeah, but I think one of the things that has actually been really good for us is we've always had a coach. We've always had a really expensive coach.
Oh, wow.
And in the early days, it was kind of like bankrupt us money. And we were with that coach for 7 years. Yeah.
What's his name?
Our first coach was called Lucy Funnell, and she sadly died. And so then we moved on to another coach. But we would do 3 hours, so 1 hour individual and then 1 hour together. And I think it's the sort of thing where often we would
per week?
And per fortnight.
Per?
Fortnight, every 2 weeks.
Okay.
And it's one of those things where for the group session where we'd be together, we'd often turn up and be like, everything's fine, not entirely sure what we're going to talk about. Do we even need to use this time? And then after about 10 minutes, you'd be like, oh, wow, we really need to talk about this thing. And actually our current coach, one of his critiques of us is that we've been working together for so long that when we have conversations in front of him, he's like, I don't understand what you're talking about. And no one else will. Because we've had this sort of mind meld where we just, it's two brains, but basically sort of combined in a way. And that's really useful. You need someone to be that sounding board who says, hey guys, like this might make sense to you, but it's nonsensical to everyone else. Let's like actually work out what you're trying to say. And so we are a big fan of coaches. And when I say expensive coaches, I think, it's very easy to get a coach, but get a good coach who really knows what they're doing and has a lot of experience.
What does it mean expensive?
$1,000 an hour.
Okay. Thousands, you say, or 1,000?
1,000, yeah.
Okay, 1,000. Okay.
Which particularly when you're starting out is a lot of money. It's expensive. But our coach now, we work with this great guy, Jake Bornstein, at Studio Metis, and he coaches me, Matt, our senior exec team. And so we actually find that super useful to have him and his partner, Darko, basically coaching the whole senior leadership team. And they're great at spotting, inconsistencies in how we think. And the hardest part of running a company is always people stuff. And, how do you create a high performing team? And if you were doing sports, again, and I must sound like a sports fanatic, and I'm not, but like, again, if you were trying to build a high performance sports team, you would have a coach. And the same is true if you're trying to build a high performing business team.
It's fun how it became kind of public for many people. I mean, I've listened to a podcast a few years ago with a guy. I mean, I think he was a coach for Steve Jobs and probably I don't know if it was Eric Schmidt or at the same time, right?
Was this the $1 Billion Coach or something like that? Yeah. I remember when this came out. Yeah,
and it was amazing. But he was, at the same time, can you believe that? It kind of
cool.
A lot of a conflict of interest. But, I think it's something people didn't talk about not that long ago, right? So, how do you find the good coach? What does that mean?
We got ours largely through recommendations. Finding somebody who you trust and really respect. And yeah, I would always get a recommendation. And for the first time around, when we found Lucy, we did an interview process and we interviewed, 10 coaches trying to find the right one. So we take it very seriously. If it works, it will be a really fundamental relationship in your life.
Interesting. So let's get back to the books. Would you have one book? If you had one book to offer to everyone listening right now, which one would that be?
I'm going to go for a book that probably people won't have heard of and isn't about startups. René Redzepi, have you heard of him? He's one of the best chefs in the world. So created, what's the restaurant called? Noma in
It's
Norway, right? Or
Norway?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it Copenhagen?
Okay. Maybe it's
Denmark, yeah.
And he wrote a diary called A Work in Progress. And I love this book because it is about being a founder, but in a completely different industry. But when you look at his obsession, when you look at his taste, and I don't mean taste as in terms of cooking, but like taste in terms of art and what good looks like. And just a sort of diary of what does it mean to be consumed by work that gives you joy, but it's also really, really hard. I absolutely love that book and found it so inspiring, and it's one that people in startups haven't normally read because it's it's a complete different field.
All right, A Work in Progress, a journal from.
It does. When I bought it, it came with a cookbook, which is probably the most useless cookbook I've ever got because it's like you need to forage from a Nordic forest to be able to actually make any of the dishes. But yeah, the diary I thought was I couldn't stop reading it.
If you had the chance to meet Alice, when she's leaving Forest for her studies, and you could tell her something, what do you tell yourself?
I think going back to, the point I made at the beginning about reading my teenage diaries, I was so into wanting to be a founder and wanting to be an entrepreneur and beginning to read a bunch of books around business. And do you remember a company called boo.com? It was one of the big
sure. It was like a
internet success and failures. And I read the book Boo-hoo when I was at school and thought that was at high school and just thought this was the coolest thing ever. And I saw one of my university friends over New Year, and she said to me, "Oh, that's so funny because actually at university, you were much more focused on traditional business and like trying to get a corporate job." And I think this again goes back to mimesis. And I would tell my younger self, like, stop looking at what everyone else is doing. It doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. You don't need to get the thing that everyone else wants. Stick with what you want. Stick with the thing that made you feel really alive and so excited and made you, rush to school every day because you wanted to do this startup. And it took me a while to get back to it. It didn't take me too long. It took me 2 years. But
still, I understand your point. Yeah,
and I think McKinsey was a great place to work in so many ways, and it would have been very easy to stay. And I was actually one of the last cohorts that they pushed us out after 2 years. You had to leave after 2 years. And it would have been very easy to stay and be on this great promotion ladder and feel really successful and, getting pats on the back all the time and all the rest of it. And yeah, my push to my younger self would be just keep remembering what you want, not what everyone else wants.
So you would have told everyone remain for the Brexit, but not for the job, right? Leave. Exit that company. Goodbye, Alice.
Yes.
All right. That was great talking to you. I learned a lot about, I've been around entrepreneurship all the way around, but I think what is very interesting in what you were doing is that you push that button very high, that button about it's all about the team, not about the product, not about the I think it's very brave, courageous to do that, and very interesting. So we'd find ways to invest maybe in entrepreneurs first in the near future. Do you have like small pockets? Is there a way to get into entrepreneurs first when you have like 100K, or it's all just for big investors?
We always have allocation for important people within the community. So we can.
I'm just not talking just for
talk.
myself, but I'm just trying to understand if even for the people around. Okay, interesting. Okay, Thank you, Alice. For the people, do you have anything to say? Yeah.
Well, the last thing I was going to say was we know that your podcast reaches many of the people that we would want to talk to. So we have set up a special email address that if you email gdiy@joinef.com, Julia and Anastasia, who are running the residency in SF, will speak to everyone who emails in there.
So cool.
We'll
thanks for that. I think you should definitely do that. Add Alice on LinkedIn. I did that this morning, and just listen to to the people listening to us. I'm just telling them to the advice Alice gave herself earlier on. And it's never too late. I'm talking about the older ones too, thinking about Michael Bloomberg and all of these guys. But just life is too short. So life
is too short. 2026 resolution. If you're thinking about founding a company, do it.
Yeah, do it right now. Do it. Bye, guys.
Bye.